A little over a year ago, I made a tier list ranking some of TF2's most popular subclasses, or in other words, the different playstyles people have found to change the way they play. So finally, 1 year later, I am here with 18 completely new and at times questionable suggestions, with many of them provided by you lovely viewers of the first part, making this tier list even more grand and more officially unofficial. Each subclass will be ranked based on how good I think they can perform in a regular game, and once again, there will be no friendly subclasses, or ones that don't try to intervene against the enemy in any kind of way. So let's begin this revisit with the worst of the worst in the F tier. The first, right at the bottom subclass, is a niche way of evolving the spy's trickery. Playing the disruptor is simple. Just stop the enemies from doing the objective. Now, usually this is pretty challenging for a spy, with them not being a very defensively minded class, but using random hiding spots or higher places that connect to control points or along payload tracks can very rarely be an effective strategy. Spy does it exceptionally well because of his access to these taunts, letting him pretend to be an object and blend into the environment. I mean, can you even see where the spy on the point is here? Yeah, you probably can, and that's why we're talking about this one first. It is very entertaining to watch the confusion set in while your enemies run around trying to figure out why their steamroll has run out of gas, but the very vast majority of experienced players will already know to look out for stuff like this, which almost always turns your 5-minute plan into a 5-second complete failure. The catapult is probably the rarest subclass in this entire list. Have you ever been minding your own business, starting out a nice new round of TF2 until you're rudely disturbed by a huntsman arrow from so far away? Well, that is the catapult. There really are people out there who load into a map, take who knows how long to find these kinds of lineups, just for the chance to surprise enemies with the farthest kill they've possibly ever seen. I was very fascinated with this subclass when I discovered it initially, to the point where I tried to find my own lineups, like this one on Badwater that aims at the main spawn entrance of the blue team, and this one on Patagonia, shooting over this roof to hit one of the branching pathways. And out of all of the time that I spent sitting in a corner of the map spamming arrows, I only got a kill with my lineups once. But I have to say that to those of you who actually play the catapult or whatever you call it, you are easily the most creative people out there. New aquatic life has recently been discovered in the TF2 waters with the addition of piranha scouts, whittling down unsuspecting enemies and filling the void that the decreased pyro shark population had left behind. Unfortunately, however, piranha scouts are much worse in every single way. Sure, they can swim around slightly faster, but Scout doesn't have access to what made the other waterbound subclass actually usable, which was its one-hit Neon Annihilator combo. Even without that point, to be fair, really any subclass that restricts you to only playing within the confinements of whatever puddle you find yourself in is always going to be a terrible subclass. So piranhas, when you put those together, while they can be a minor inconvenience when you don't see them coming, they're just not nearly as menacing as pyro sharks were. The Demolisher seems much less like a subclass and more just the description of someone who really dislikes engineers. It's another entry that is not really all about killing, but more about making sure that no matter what, the enemy engineers can never have a brief moment to feel like their buildings are safe. This right here is literally all you do. And yes, it is important as a spy to put pressure on buildings, but you're also not really doing anything against the rest of the enemy team, and all that engineer has to do is switch to a different class, and now your job is pointless. It's nice to see the sapper in your hands for once, but please set aside your differences with those engineers. It's nerfing you to the ground. The Spevy has absolutely skyrocketed in popularity recently. The gameplay, though, is really nothing special. You're just doing what a regular meleeing heavy would do, but with more sneaking around and instilling fear into your enemies. The problem is, as I've mentioned in the past, Heavy is a surprisingly terrible melee class, since he's a massive target that can't catch up with anyone, along with him also just not being the sneakiest class in the world. So I know for some people this might be a pretty rare statement to hear, but if you want to do well as the Spevy, it would be better for you to just play regular Spy instead. Technically, every class has a medieval version, which is essentially taking the weapon restrictions from the medieval melee mode and using it in not that mode. But medieval medic, aside from another subclass you're probably already familiar with, is the only other somewhat used version of these subclasses, really only because of the Crusader's crossbow and the amputator, allowing you to still output a decently reliable amount of healing for your team, even if it may take a while and make the game feel like you're playing shoot the barrel. It gives you a little bit more kill potential too, since you'll always be having your damaged weapons active, while also making you realize how hard you're restricting yourself because of how good the medi guns actually are. But having at least some of the tools to do your job partially is what just barely keeps this subclass from hitting the bottom of the list. With the previously mentioned piranhas taking their place, the sharks, well, they're all on land now thanks to the buff that the gas passer received last year, allowing the Neon Annihilator to be combo usable with it, which even now is still not very good, huh? Now don't get me wrong, the land shark bringing its infested waters to any map in place of your choosing is definitely a huge improvement, but it's no secret that the gas passer needed way more buffs to actually be a weapon worth using. This thing takes an insanely long time to charge to even use the combo in the first place. Like, you could probably walk out of the room entirely, do a beautiful scenic drive, stop at the home of someone you know and prank them by seeing how long you can hide in their cabinets before they find you, all before the gas passer finishes charging once. So while the land shark itself by concept is not that bad, it's the infrequency of the combo that prevents it from being placed any higher on this list. Heavy players that use the brass beast are often jabbed at for looking like sentry guns, because of how slow they move around while they're mowing down their enemies. And there are some who really take that comment personally, and no matter if there's rain or shine, it's day or night, the second their gun is spun, they stop moving and actually try to act out being a living sentry. Now in theory, both heavies and sentries are very strong at being area denial characters, but the problem is, you now don't have the positioning that a regular heavy would carefully plan out since you aren't moving. And even more importantly, you don't have an engineer sitting there smacking away to repair you at all times. So usually you might pick up a few kills once you pick your spot to stand, but after that you either just run out of ammo or the enemies take a whole 1 second to figure out how easy it is to counter you. Here's another subclass all about sitting in one place. Now the term turtling is usually used by engineers to describe how just placing your buildings right next to each other should be avoided, because taking more consideration with it, like putting a dispenser where your team mainly plays, or a teleporter somewhere safe but still close to where the fight is happening, gives you and your team much more value. The real turtles, though, know that what they're doing is wrong, but playing TF2 like it's a home defense simulator is exactly the way they like to play it. The reason I put a subclass all about playing engineer in an ineffective way so high, though, is that even if you are intentionally minding your own business, you can still get some value depending on where you set up shop. You can turtle to help hold the last point, for example, which actually isn't that bad and can make a huge difference when your team, who by default needs to hold the point too, starts to work around you. But you could also turtle in here. I don't think most people can even name what map this room's even a part of. I think placing Pocket Medic right in the middle of the list is perfect. It's one of those things you either love or hate. Step 1, take a good look at your team and find that one special person that you think will carry you across the finish line. Step 2, only heal and support that one teammate for the entirety of the game's duration. Step 3, good job, I think. It should go without mentioning that the success from being a support to 1 out of the 11 other people on your team is entirely decided by how well your one very special pick actually does. If your pocket is playing very well and there's at least some kind of other healing source for the other people you may or may not be ignoring, then that might turn into the winning formula to completely stomp out a lobby. But if you're healing someone a bit more questionable, you might want to start broadening your healing options at that point, or your stomp might look a little bit different. The SMG sniper pretty much ignores everything about the class that has to do with sniping. Instead, they prioritize his other main weapon, which isn't terrible since the SMG is essentially just the stock pistol with a larger clip size, letting you actually get away with a few kills from time to time. And this is probably the closest thing TF2 will ever have to a basic rifle using character. I mean, if you really squint your eyes, it almost looks like you're playing a completely different game. Sniper, though, as a class, is obviously meant to be doing a lot more of this than he is of this, which is why you will fall short with the SMG a lot of the time. But if your aim is at least somewhat good, good, you would be surprised how much value you could still get with it. Next, we have the definition of playing games within a game, with the help of the Wrangler. Most of the time, this weapon is a defensive secondary to prevent your sentry from dying so fast, or a tool to help you sentry jump towards higher places. But to be a gamer engineer, you need to see the Wrangler as the joystick to how you play the actual game, with your only source of damage coming from wrangled sentry guns. Placing sentries in a more strategic way and being mindful while planning where to put your buildings is now required. It's a challenge that actively promotes doing what engineers do, which is why I recommend it, but it doesn't reach any higher than the B tier for all the times you'll run into when you'd definitely rather be using an actual gun. If you ever wondered how it looks to like a weapon too much, this right here is the definition. A regular demo man is known for having two very strong weapons, while the sticky tank exchanges one of them for a slight extra health boost, which sounds like an oddly one-sided trade-off, but it actually kinda works. This is mainly due to the sticky bomb launcher being one of the best weapons in the game, doing upwards of over 100 damage per bomb, and now matching Soldier to be the second tankiest class. So tapping your left and right mouse buttons until the paint of your mouse rubs off for as long as possible is a winnable strategy. Alright, now here's a pretty easy one to cover. The buff scout is essentially just a Trolldier, but with a shotgun, which is actually very good. You are still that high movement based subclass that the vast majority of soldier players know and love, and are still mainly focused on dive bombing enemies for the one-shot market gardener kill, but now you have a shotgun too for when your dive bombs don't go according to plan, or if there's a ceiling above you, one of the Trolldier's biggest weaknesses. There are still a fair share of shortcomings, like your primary weapon looking like the entrance to an underground Mario level and doing absolutely zero damage, but compared to the regular Trolldier selection of weapons, making the questionable switch to the shotgun is actually good and makes you much more versatile for the fights waiting for you at the end of your rocket jumps. Scouts are known for a lot of things that usually don't have anything to do with being a support, but what makes this odd is just how many strong supportive utility weapons Scout actually owns, like the Force of Nature to push back escaping enemies or put some distance to an enemy pressuring your teammates, the Mad Milk to extinguish and give out healing when it's needed, or even the Candy Cane that drops actual health packs your team can pick up, and I guess also enemies. Using this kind of combination is like the Scout equivalent of the Soldier's different banners, where if you use your tools effectively and at the right moments, you can provide massive bonuses to your team, making this an actually impactful subclass that could redeem the integrity of what most people think about Scout, even though using supportive weapons doesn't really stop you from playing him like you would normally. The Samurai is a very specific, recently peaked combination that makes use of the Black Box, the Conjurer, and the Katana, all three of which being weapons with the ability to heal you. Your goal as a Samurai is to practice your honor by trying to get into as many melee fights as possible, using your healing-based weapons to make you nearly unkillable, but if you happen to find yourself in an honorless lobby limiting your ability to melee fight, you still have access to the extra firepower against those who disturb you. I think it's really fascinating how it mainly became popularized from crazy clips of people healing through everything in the funny modes like VSH and Zombie Infection. Though I will say that this constant need to get into melee fights is probably the one thing that prevents the Samurai from reaching the S tier. And speaking of which, there were a lot of you who mentioned that just using the Dragon's Fury was almost an entire subclass in itself, and when you equip it with other weapons like the flare gun, I gotta say it really feels like it does. Like you've all of a sudden turned into a wizard launching fireball spells at people. It's two weapons that both get buffed when you hit multiple accurate shots on enemies. From the faster firing speed of the Dragon's Fury that can quickly melt them down, to the flare gun's crit shots that stack onto enemies, changing Pyro from whatever words you would use to ethically describe this to a sharpshooting power class that improves when the accuracy of your fireballs improve. It's got a good theme, and more importantly, this subclass has some of the best potential, making Pyro at times feel more unique and more powerful than it was already known to be, and with basic criteria like that, it definitely belongs in the S tier. The last remaining subclass was by far the most recommended out of anything that made this list. It's finally time to talk about the rotating heavy. Or I guess we could cover option number 2, the Hybrid Knight. The Hybrid Knight is a well-built mix to the two sides of a demo man. The explosive high damage output of his grenade launchers, paired with the speed and melee strength of his shields and swords. A combination giving you all the tools you need to perform well as a middle ground damage class, or even go out there and make some flashy moves. The weapons involved and their stats actively counteract the weaknesses of both sides. There is so much I could say about how adaptable and enjoyable the Hybrid Knight really is, and how it truly sets the bar for everything that a subclass should be. The Hybrid Knight is not only the best subclass out of the new faces, but the best subclass in the entire game. And that is yet another tier list of the many TF2 subclasses. Now obviously these rankings are completely based on my own opinion, which is what makes this list entirely unofficial, and I would love to see what all you think. Whether if it's adjustments to the list that you think would be better, or new suggestions for other subclasses that I haven't covered. So feel free to let me know any feedback on this video in the comments below, and if you want to see more content like this, the link to my first subclass tier list will be in the description. I really do appreciate all of the recent support that you all have given me. You are all absolutely amazing, and I'll see you all in the next silly little video I make. Bye-bye.